2007 through 2009 Chrysler Aspen front and rear shock replacement. I'm Brian Essa from How to Automotive. I'm going to walk you through the steps of replacing those. To get started, we need to get the front of the vehicle off the ground. I'm using my rack. If you're doing this at home, you can use floor jacks and jack stands and jack it up over on the frame, and you want the suspension hanging down. Before I start removing any bolts, I'm going to put a pole jack under the lower control arm. You can also use a floor jack underneath the lower control arm, and you're just going to jack it up a little bit and take a little pressure off the shock. Next, we're going to remove the 18mm bolt on the bottom of the shock. I'm going to use my M18 Fuel 3/8 drive Milwaukee impact gun. Having a tool like this little impact gun will make jobs like this much easier on you. I'll leave a link in the description of the video. That way, if you want to check it out, you can find that there. You want to put this bolt aside where you're going to know that it goes back on the bottom of the shock. It's a little bit different than the top bolt, so keep track of that. The top of the shock is secured with a nut and a bolt, so you're going to need a wrench. I'm using my combination wrench, ratcheting wrenches here. This wrench is a 13-15 combination wrench. It's about 18 inches long, and I like to use them on jobs like this so you can put a lot of torque on the bolts. And I'm also going to use my 18mm socket and my Milwaukee here to take it out. I'll leave a link in the description for both of these tools. So the replacement shocks I'm using are made by KYB, and these are the part numbers. I'll be sure to link this up in the description. That way, if you need to pick those up, find those there. These are affiliate links, so if you click on them, I will make a small commission, which is very much appreciated. It helps the channel grow at no additional cost to you. Before I put the bolts in, I'm going to put a little bit of blue thread locker on the threads. It's a little glue that helps prevent the bolts from vibrating loose. This provides a little extra protection. I'll put a link in the description also. After applying thread locker onto the bolts, you can put the shock back up into position, slide the top bolt through, and go ahead and start the nut on the back. Don't tighten it just yet. And then we're going to position our lower portion of the shock on the lower control arm like this. If the hole doesn't line up, what you're going to have to do is use your pole jack or your floor jack and jack the car up, or the lower control arm up or down to line up with the hole. And then you can start the nut and run it in and tighten the bottom bolt. Then you can tighten the top nut and bolt. And that'll complete the job of replacing the front shocks. And now we're going to move to the rear of the vehicle and do the rear shocks, and I'm going to walk you through the process of doing that. To get started, we need to get our vehicle up in the air. If you're doing this at home, use floor jacks and jack stands and jack it up by the frame. You want the suspension hanging. Before I unbolt everything, I put a pole jack underneath the suspension. If you're doing this at home, you can use a floor jack underneath. That way you can, when you take the bolts off, it doesn't spring on you. So you're going to need an 18mm wrench and a 15mm socket. I'm going to use my Milwaukee M18 Fuel 3/8 drive cordless ratchet here to break the nuts free. This little gun has more than enough power to break the nuts and bolts free. I'll leave a link in the description of the video. That way if you guys want to check it out. Now that you got the lower nut and bolt out, we need to get to the top bolt. And it's tucked in behind this spare tire here. So you have a choice where you could either take the spare tire down or work around it. If you go over onto the passenger side and you look up, there's plenty of room to get any type of tools you need, so including your impact guns in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work around the tire by using my a special wrench. It's made by Mountain. It's about 18 inches long with a flex head. This is a 15-13 combination wrench here. I'll leave a link in the description in the video so you guys can check those out. So with the little flex head, you're able to angle it in a little bit, and then you can ratchet it off. And there's plenty of length on this wrench to put tons of torque on it to break the nuts and bolts free. So you don't have to back the inner bolt. It has a little metal bracket welded to the nut, and when you turn it, it wedges against the frame, and it holds it in place while you loosen the other side off. Now that I got the bolt out and removed the shock, here is the nut that goes on the back side. It has that metal bracket. I'm going to be installing KYB shocks here. I'll leave a link in the description of the video for these shocks. That way if you need to pick them up, you can get them. Before I install the new shocks, I'm going to put a little blue thread locker on the threads of the bolts. This is like a glue to help prevent the bolts from vibrating loose and coming back off. The brand we use is made by Permatex. It's called the blue thread locker. I will leave a link in the description for it. Now you can stab the shock back into its tower and reach around back and start the bolt. Now that you got the bolt stabbed through, you're going to take the little nut with a metal bracket welded to it, and you're going to slide it in between right here. And then you're going to push the bolt through until it stabs inside the nut, and then you tighten the bolt up by hand until it's snug. Now that you got the top bolt and nut started, what we're going to do is take the shock and push it up into its mount right here. And if you look to the side, most likely the mount holes are not going to line up. So what you do is you either lower your floor jack or raise your floor jack to line up the holes. If you're using a pull jack, it's the same thing. Then you can slide your bolt through and start your nut. Then you can go ahead and tighten the top and the bottom bolts. And you're going to duplicate the same process on the passenger side. It'll be a little easier for you don't have to work around the tire. And that'll complete the job, replacing all 4 shocks on a 2007 through 2009 Chrysler Aspen. I'm Brian Essett from How To Automotive. I'd like to thank you guys for watching my videos, encourage you to subscribe, invite you to head over to the howtoautomotive.com website for more valuable videos like this, and also to remind you that I will link up all the parts and tools I use in the video. That way, if you need to pick anything up, it's all there in the description. Thank you again for watching.